In this video, we'll learn about the link between development and spread of extremism. So this comes in internal security in GS paper GS paper 3, General Studies paper 3. So this video will be helpful to you during the mains preparation, and there are only few days left in the prelims. So it is in May, so you have to prepare well and you have to practice a lot of previous year's questions, as well as practice test series also of different coaching institutes. So these are the notes that I have made. These are short notes on link between development and spread of extremism. It is in the General Studies paper 3, internal security. So now let's start. So development, as you can see, development and internal security are critically dependent on each other, and a lack of development creates a discontent among masses. So lack of development will create a discontent among masses, and regions which are development deficit provide fertile ground for extremist ideologies to flow. So this is the connection between the link between the development and spread of extremism. You can remember these 3 points. And as we know that in many ways development and internal security are related to each other and are two sides of the same coin. So each is critically dependent on the other. It has often been seen that lack of development is responsible for discontent and ignorance among the masses. So if there is lack of development, it will cause discontent and ignorance among the masses, as well as regions which are characterized by development deficit provide a fertile ground for extremist ideologies to flourish. So this is the link, and this is mainly the preface, and then there are some reasons which are because there are reasons for the spread of extremism activities. So first is progress of socio-economic development among major states is not uniform. So as we know, there is in India the progress of socio-economic development among the major states is not uniform, and economic disparities have created social tensions, urban unrest, rural upsurge, and youth disenchantment. Problems of deprivation, unemployment, poverty, food shortage, lack of housing, overcrowding, and degradation of basic amenities have given rise to anger and crime. So that is why progress of socio-economic development among major states is not uniform, and this has there are so many reasons that which give rise to social tensions, urban unrest, economic disparities, and problems of deprivation, unemployment, poverty, food shortage, lack of housing, lack of basic amenities, and overcrowding, which give rise to anger as well as crime among the people. So this is one of the reasons for spread of left-wing extremism. Then rise in population, which adds to the pressure on demand without increase in supply. So we know that the problem is getting worse with rise in population, and which adds to the pressure of demand without a corresponding increase in supply. So these regional socio-economic imbalances create a non-uniform, unequal development in the Indian society. So this leads to the non-uniform and unequal development in the Indian society. They have given rise to extremism such as subnationalism. As you can see, there are types of extremism: subnationalism, communalism, insurgencies, Naxalism, and terrorism. So all these types are a type of extremism. Then after that, we'll go for what is the ideology of this type of extremism. So as you can see here, the ideology is that replacement of democracy with a more authoritarian regime. So this is the ideology, that these people, the extremists, want to replace democracy with a more authoritarian regime, as you can see here, and these people are labeled as extremists. So what do they take advantage of? So they take advantage of functional inadequacy, underdevelopment, economic inequality, discrimination of rural people, neglect and injustice, neglect of people and injustice feeling among the people. So they take advantage of these things. So they take advantage of these things: lack of proper functioning of the government, proper administration, and they convince people to join them or become extremists. So this is one of the points. Then another reason is development induced displacement. So Development induced displacement is that in many areas and in many districts in India, there is a displacement of tribal communities as well as people due to development. For example, in building dams, a large number of people are displaced who are living in the nearby villages. Then again, same happens for nuclear power plants or any big infrastructure project. This causes a discontent among people, and if those people are uh, not given a proper opportunity to earn their livelihoods, then it causes development induced displacement and discontent among the people. Then Forest Protection Act of the 1980. So Forest Protection Act of the 1980. So the government enacted the Forest Protection Act in the 1980, and by assigning forest officials extraordinary power, they gave them extraordinary powers to regulate development and even habitation rights. So the law essentially outlawed the existence of many tribal villages that had been in place for centuries. So as these areas were delineated as reserve forests, traditional occupations of even gathering twigs were forbidden. So this was one of the main reasons that Forest Protection Act of 1980 alienated tribals, because the forests given the were declared as reserve forests, and traditional occupations of the tribes living there as well as the people living there were forbidden there. Even gathering twigs were forbidden, and the powers to regulate development and even habitation rights were given to the forest officials. So many tribal villages that had been in place for centuries, the people living in them were alienated. So this caused a discontent among people. Then again, the 2008 Forest Rights Act. Again, there was a new Forest Rights Act in the 2008, which recognized the tribal rights over forest land and forest produce. But animosity towards the government has already grown substantially during the last 3 decades, and exacerbated by the lack of basic development support to tribal villages. So in 2008, again, the government thought that we have to bring a change in the policy. So there was a Forest Right Act which was enacted, and tribal rights over forest land and forest produce were given to them. So but it had been a long time, because from 1980 to 2008 there has been 28 years. So the discontent among the people had already grown, and in 3 decades the animosity towards the government had already grown substantially. So again, there is the Minimum Wages Act, remains an act on paper, and minimum wages rates under the act are not implemented, especially in the rural areas. So this is also one of the major reasons that Minimum Wages Act remains an act on the paper. In much of rural India, agricultural labor is governed by the act, but minimum wage rates under the act are not implemented, except where the prosperity of the farmers and the demand for labor makes it unavoidable. That is where the farmers are very much prosperous, and the rules are properly regulated and acted. There the Minimum Wages Act is unavoidable, but in rural India it is not implemented well. So these were some of the reasons. Then we will further move on to causes for spread of left wing extremism, as you can see here. Yes, so now causes for spread of left-wing extremism. So the first cause is that first we looked at the reasons. So you have to remember the reasons. You can look at the video and then remember the reasons. Then we will go for causes for spread of left-wing extremism. So the first cause for spread of left-wing extremism is that first you have to remember the fifth schedule of the Constitution states that all scheduled areas of the country which are forest reserves and are inhabited by the scheduled tribes are to be administered by the governors of the state. So fifth schedule states that all the scheduled areas of the country come under the fifth schedule, and also some areas are in the sixth schedule. But fifth schedule of the Constitution states that all scheduled areas of the country which are forest reserves and are inhabited by the scheduled tribes are to be administered by the governors of the state. But this has not been properly implemented in many of the states and many of the districts, and in many of the areas. So forests have been leased for mining, thereby displacing many tribal communities. So they don't have a livelihood if they are displaced from their home, or if they are displaced from their uh, displaced from their homes and don't have a livelihood. So this causes a discontent among the people, and people are forced to take steps against the government, because actually these steps were taken for development of that region, but it has displaced many tribal communities. So now we'll move on to the next cause. So the second cause is that ninth schedule of the constitution deals with cultivable land, which was dominated and owned by the upper castes in India, mainly after independence, or in the 1947, when the uh, when this land sealing laws were implemented. But the thing is that the ninth schedule deals with the cultivable land which was dominated and owned by the upper caste. The ninth schedule tells that it should be acquired by the government and redistributed among India's landless farmers. But only three states have implemented the land sealing laws. So these states were Jammu Kashmir, West Bengal, and Kerala. The other states did not implement the land sealing laws. So this is one of the major cause, because the farmers, landless farmers and laborers, did not get their lands, and they don't have a if they don't have land, then they have to work in some other unorganized sector for earning their livelihoods, and this will cause a discontent among the people. So it will lead to extremism, and it will lead to animosity towards the government, as well as expectations towards the governments will be not met. So now the third point is fundamental rights and directive principles also safeguard the tribal population. So there are many fundamental rights and directive principles which safeguard the tribal population. So these fundamental rights are right to life and liberty, Article 21, right against exploitation, Article 23, then fundamental rights like Article 38, securing a just social order, 39, guiding principles of policy, and they also get reservation and promotion of education and economic interest of SC, STs, and other weaker sections from directive principles of state policy. So these are the fundamental rights that they get, that these people get, and it should help them in gaining a better status in the society. But let's see, it will take little more time. Then we come at the factors affecting rise of extremism. Then there are land related factors, displacement and forced evictions, livelihood related causes, social. So these are the factors affecting rise of extremism. So first is the land related factors. So what happens that the land sealing laws, people found loopholes in the land sealing laws and evaded it somehow. So evasion of land sealing laws, existence of special land tenures, and encroachment and occupation of government and community land by powerful sections of the society. So these are some of the land related factors. Then displacement and forced evictions, as I already told you, eviction from land traditionally used by tribals, displacement caused by irrigation and power projects without adequate arrangements for rehabilitation, large scale land acquisition for public purposes without appropriate compensation or rehabilitation. So these are displacement and forced eviction related factors. Then livelihood related causes. So livelihood related causes are that disruption of traditional occupations, livelihood related causes, disruption of traditional occupations, and lack of alternative work opportunities. Then government policy is more focused on food security, which is also ridden by corruption in the public distribution system. So if people are not getting proper food, they will always have a discontent. They will always have some animosity towards the government. So PDS is not working well. These are some of the livelihood related causes. PDS is not working well. Then traditional disruption of traditional occupation and deprivation of traditional rights and common property resources. So in common property resources, there is a deprivation of traditional rights. So now we'll look at social exclusion. So continued practice of untouchability in various forms in some areas is still present. as Indian society is divided into various castes and classes. So continued practice of untouchability is still present in some areas. Untouchability has been banned and is punishable in India, but still in some areas it is practiced. And then loopholes in governance. So loopholes in governance are that corruption and poor provision, non-provision of essential public services, including primary healthcare and education. That is, always there is corruption in the and poor provision or non-provisions of essential public services and public facilities, and people are not getting primary healthcare and education also. Misuse of power by the police and violation of the norms of laws. These are some of the loopholes in governance. So we have looked at the land related factors, displacement and forced evictions, and livelihood related causes, social exclusion, and loopholes in governance. So now after that we will look at the regions affected by left wing extremism. So now we look at the regions affected by the left wing extremism. So the most important region which is affected by the left wing extremism in India is the Red Corridor. So Red Corridor is in eastern India and it consists of mainly many states. It is in eastern India. It consists of many states, and the it experiences considerable Naxalite and Maoist insurgency. So this is the Red Corridor. Then Naxalite. What are the Naxalites? So Naxalites are the group which mainly consists of the armed cadre of the Communist Party of India. So the we all know the Communist Party of India and what is the ideology of communism. So Naxalite groups mainly follow that ideology for overthrowing the government, and Naxalite groups mainly consist of the armed forces of the Communist Party of India. All forms of Naxalite organizations have been declared as terrorist organizations under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of India, and they have been banned. 85 districts across 9 states have been affected by left wing extremism. So there are 85 districts mainly which have been identified across 9 states, and they have been seriously affected by left wing extremism. So these states are in, let's see, these states are in Chhattisgarh, Orissa, Jharkhand, and some states are also in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. Then some areas are in Maharashtra also, and then in Northeast also there are some states which are affected by left wing extremism. But the most important states are Chhattisgarh, Orissa, and Jharkhand are the most infested states by left wing extremism. And economic conditions of these affected regions is not that good. That is why people are attracted towards left wing extremism, because they are discontent, to show their discontent among the government, with the government, and the facilities, public facilities of these areas are well below the national average. Now we look at the economic conditions of the affected regions. The districts which comprise of the Red Corridor are among the poorest and backward in the country, most backward in the country. They have a non-diversified economy. That, for example, non-diversified economy is a type of economy in which people are dependent on a single source of livelihood rather than diversifying their sources of income. So if that source of income fails, then they have no other form to earn their livelihood. So this is a very critical point and also very important point, so that we have to keep it in mind, so the economic condition of these regions can be improved. Then agriculture is the main occupation, which is sometimes supplemented with mining or forestry. It can be illegal mining or forestry also. Then exploitation of natural resources for the progress of the country in this area has been the source of tribal dissent. So as you know, the exploitation of natural resources such as minerals, mines, and other power projects has been a source of tribal dissent, because they want to preserve their land and preserve their livelihood, as well as their homes, as well as their forests and natural resources. But for development, the government is not going to for development the government is using these natural resources, and they are not getting equal opportunities for earning their livelihoods also. Then we'll move on to the social condition of the affect. These were the economic conditions, and then we'll move on to the social conditions of the affected regions. So let's move on to the social conditions of the affected regions. Okay, so first is that I have told you about the states which were infested by the left wing extremism, but you can what you can do is that you can, yes, what you can do is that you can choose each and every state, like you can choose Chhattisgarh or Orissa or Jharkhand, and or you can choose Andhra Pradesh or Telangana or any other state, and explain the historical background of that state as well as the current affairs. You can read and see if there is any extremist activity going on in that state, or there is some news, and then you can integrate it with these points. So you can explain about the different states, and UPSC will not ask a question about different states because the questions in UPSC are of very helicopter perspective. That is, it has a large perspective. But if you want to gain more knowledge, then you can focus on different states, and you can learn the background also and explain the problems in different states in your points. So now we'll come on to the social conditions of affected regions. Like if you want to explain the social conditions of different states, then for example I'll tell you, if there is Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, then the issues here include underdevelopment and unequal distribution of land. Some of the issues are very much similar in different states, so I'm not going to explain it again and again. The issues here include underdevelopment and unequal distribution of land. So this is one of the issues. Then tribal rights, which are affected by the creation of special economic zones as well as large scale bauxite mining. So special economic zones have been created which have affected tribal rights, as well as bauxite mining is affected. So these are some of the points which are exclusive to Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. Then also anti-Naxal efforts and low support from the local population has led to depleting support for Maoist activities in this region. So this is one of the points. Now let's look at the social conditions of affected regions. So India has a stratified society with caste and feudal divisions. So this is the social conditions of the affected regions. These regions have a stratified society with caste and feudal divisions. So this will always cause this will always create underprivileged castes or societies. So this will create a discontent among people. Then high indigenous tribal population including Santhal and Gonds, and then Bihar and Jharkhand have both caste and tribal divisions. So these are states having both caste divisions as well as tribal divisions. The caste divisions in states like Bihar is very much strong. Then Chhattisgarh and Odisha have significant impoverished tribal population. So economic condition is not good. And then Andhra Pradesh and Telangana region similarly has deep caste divides with a strict social hierarchy. Then lack of proper healthcare facilities is also in these areas. In fact, there is a lack of proper public facilities in these areas, like sanitation also, or healthcare, primary education, food. These all are housing. So these are all are problems of these areas. So I have explained these points, and these points are from different states also. Like I have explained these points, social conditions of affected regions, and I have explained points which are exclusive to different states. Then again we will go to indicators of left wing extremism. So there are some indicators which indicate that left wing extremism is present in these areas. So first are the government indicators. So if there is a area affected by left wing extremism, then government will focus on primary and secondary education in that area more, basic sustainable employment in that area more. Then government will also focus on basic healthcare facilities, drinking water, law and order, and grievance redressal mechanism, as well as public distribution system. Then there are the geographical indicators. So the geographical indicators of left-wing extremism are the terrain may be not that good for development. Then forest cover in these areas are very high, Then rainfall and accessibility of these areas is low. Rainfall is high, so accessibility of these areas is low. Areas are low. Then again, social and economic indicators are that poverty may be present, a lot of poverty. The economic conditions of these areas is not good. Class and caste divisions are present. Youth unemployment is there. Level of industrialization is not much, and land holdings. The land holdings, that is the area of land that a particular person holds, that one person holds, is not that much. So people are poor. Then there are some miscellaneous indicators. So drug trafficking may be present. Youth population and religion, youth population component. Then religion and conversion issues may be there. For example, forceful religious conversions may be there. And role of women is very much less. Economic role of women in the societies and the houses is less, and they are mainly involved in low income activities or non income activities. Then environmental indicators also may be present. Then expansion of extremism. So expansion of extremism is a very important topic. How expansion of extremism takes place. In this case, there are few points. So first point is that expansion in adjoining areas due to hard combat. So for example, if there is a district or a state or an area where there is a combat between the Naxal and the forces, like other forces of the government, so the taking advantage of jurisdiction problems between states, these groups, Naxal groups, carry out attacks in different parts of the country and escape to other states to lie low. This can be associated with Andhra Pradesh model, where the intensive use of greyhounds has led to a lot of spillover to other states. So they move to other states for safety purposes as well as for expansion. Then expansion due to increasing association with anti-state forces. So new territory in new states may result in a corridor for Naxals. If they acquire new territory in new states, then they will create a corridor for themselves and they can collaborate with other insurgent groups, so who are essentially ideologically different but are anti-states. So there are many groups working in different parts of the country which are anti-state. So these Naxal groups can regroup and they may be ideologically different, but they both are anti-state, so they can collaborate with each other. This can be associated with the developing situation in Northeast and Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, so this can be associated with a developing situation in Northeast and Jammu Kashmir, as both are already disturbed areas. Yes, and it provides an easy footing for the Naxals. And there has been an increasing collaboration between the Naxals and the separatist leaders in Jammu and Kashmir, along with Ulfa training the Naxal cadres. So United Liberation Front of Assam is also sometimes seen training the Naxal cadres. Then expansion of Naxal activities due to international collaboration. So the likely collaboration with international Maoist movements may give it a much more dangerous dimension to tackle, which India seems to be unprepared of. So there have been increasing evidences of international Maoist organizations in the adjoining countries, extending financial and ideological support to the Indian Naxals. So this is also one of the major problems of expansion of extremism. So there are three main points, you have to remember this. Then Operation Green Hunt. So Operation Green Hunt, what was Operation Green Hunt? It was started in 2009, Cobra forces and state police forces against the Naxalites, and it was a prolonged open-ended engagement between the two, and a commando battalion for resolution action would take the lead in this operation, as that is the Cobra forces. It was a long prolonged engagement, that is a prolonged operation, not a operation very short time frame operation. So operations, since this unit is specially the Cobra forces were trained specially for this combat operations with extremist groups. Now we look at the extremism in Northeast. So as we can see, Northeast is a very secessionist and autonomy movements against foreigners and immigrants. Northeast is a neglected area of India. Nowadays development activities are going on, but earlier it was very much neglected with a different terrain, different ethnic groups and different type of people which are different culture, language, as well as many things were different from the mainland India. So there were many secessionist and autonomy movements against foreigners and immigrants there, and ethnic integration and looking back to their roots as a reaction to perceived imposition of Indianization. So they did not want integration into the and Indianization. They wanted they wanted their ethnic integration, as well as they looked back to their roots, and as a reaction it was perceived that they don't want Indianization. Then political evolution in Northeast is influenced by its divergent historical experience, social and cultural diversity, distinctiveness, ethnic, linguistic, and religious diversity is also present. All these lead to socio-political tensions and instability, which again result in agitational approach to problems and violence and against the government. So conflicts can be grouped under national conflicts like distinct homeland. They want national conflicts like they want a distinct homelands. They want their distinct homeland or a separate nation. Then these are come under national conflict. Then ethnic conflicts, for example, less dominant tribal groups are against the political and cultural hold of major more dominant tribal groups. Then again there are sub-regional conflicts, sub-regional aspirations or autonomous council. They want sub-regional new states or new areas or autonomous councils. So these are three types of conflicts, and these were some of the points about extremism in Northeast. Then characteristics of extremism in Northeast, that the conflicts in Northeast have some peculiar characteristics. First is asymmetrical and ambiguous. These conflicts are asymmetrical and ambiguous, and then there are unconventional modes, and there are they also deploy political and psychological means. Then what you can do is you can just take the Northeast states, for example, Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, Meghalaya, all these states. Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, and Meghalaya, and you can just look at the historical background of extremism in these states, and you can look at the current affairs and then integrate them into the points, and you can write these points. For example, I will tell you about Assam. So you can first, Assam was not first of all Assam. So Assam, what's the problem is in Assam is that firstly, during independence, Assam was undivided, so it has the longest history of insurgency, and there were many Naga and Mizo insurgencies which were to flare up. So the affected areas formed two districts of the state, and even in the present truncated Assam. So these formed after the insurgencies and many confrontations that took between the government forces as well as the Indian forces as well as the these insurgent groups. Two new states were created, that is Nagaland and Mizoram, and the affected areas form two districts of the state. Even in the present truncated Assam, there are a number of extremist outfits led by the United Liberation Front of Assam. So this is about Assam, but you can just search for it for different states and you can put them in the points. Then we'll look at the government initiatives and left-wing extremism affected areas. So government initiatives in these areas mainly are based on security. Then for improving the security of these areas, people living in these areas, development, ensuring fundamental and legal rights of local communities, improvement in governance and public relation management. So these are some of the initiatives of left-wing extremism affected areas. Then important schemes of left-wing extremism affected states. So first is security related. Infrastructure scheme. So for this, under this scheme, funds are provided for expenditure relating to insurance, training and operational needs of security forces. So funds are provided for insurance, operation and training of security forces. Then special infrastructure scheme for improving the infrastructure and upgradation of training infrastructure, weaponry, equipments, and fill up critical infrastructure gap of social forces of the states. Then again there is skill development programs. So skill development programs are like the Roshni and the Roshni skill development program, which is being run in 34 districts affected by left-wing extremism and is implemented by the Ministry of Rural Development and Ministry of Labor and Employment especially. And Roshni is a special scheme under Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gramin Kaushal Yojana. So this is the skill development program. Then integrated action plan. The planning commission, which is now the Niti Aayog, has announced the integrated action plan covering 60 tribal and backward districts for accelerated development by providing public infrastructure and services. So this is mainly by the Niti Aayog for improving the public infrastructure and services of these areas affected by left-wing extremism. Then again there is the integrated road requirement plan for improving the road connectivity as well as the connectivity to the areas which are not well connected to the mainland India. Then installation of mobile towers for better connectivity and spread of IT technology as well as uh, services. Then scheme of fortified police stations so that police can do their work and improve the so that scheme of fortified police stations for uh, the ministry has sanctioned 400 police stations in 10 left-wing extremist affected areas so that the police can do their work extremely well and they feel protected. So all these are the important schemes. These are important for the mains preparation, and hope you found this video informational. I'll see you in the next video.